As we're navigating the environment that we're in, we have seen the value of having diverse perspectives at those decision-making tables where policies are made, whether it's corporate policy, whether it's higher education policy, whether it's nonprofit policy, whether it's public policy. We need to have people with different perspectives in these spaces to be able to consider various different angles of the decisions that are going to affect people.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Linda Akutagawa, President and CEO of Leadership Education for Asian Pacifics, or LEAP. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joanna. I'm so pleased to be here with you all and your audience.
Linda, tell us about LEAP.
Well, LEAP is a 40-plus-year-old organization serving the Asian and Pacific Islander communities. We were founded to really help grow, develop, and uncap the leadership talent that exists within Asian and Pacific Islander communities.
Linda, tell us the origin story. I mean, there's always like a reason why an organization like LEAP gets founded. I'm sure it's a good one.
Yeah, it's one of those, maybe a classic tale of a group of people sitting around a kitchen table. That was literally what I was told, just saying, why are we seeing the same people over and over again showing up in community leadership spaces? And it became one of those, we should, or someone should do something to encourage more people to become leaders in the community. And so that's how LEAP started. And so their solution to try to encourage more people to step up into leadership roles in the community was to produce and to conduct workshops where I think one of the needs that they saw is that they think, well, more people may be willing to step up and take on leadership roles if they felt like they had the skills and develop that confidence. And so that was the thought process. And so LEAP as an organization started in Southern California. They were doing workshops, for example, public speaking. One of the original classic ones that we still produce is a workshop called Understanding and Leading from Your Cultural and Values. And the idea is leaning into your leadership by really exploring how your cultural value influences your leadership. And it's a classic. It's still one that we, to this day, still deliver as a means for people to really explore this intersection between who they are culturally, the values that they bring to their leadership, and what does this mean in terms of how it does play out in their leadership? Because sometimes may not have had a chance to think about it, but to be able to do so in company with others is something that can be really eye-opening and really affirming.
Hmm.
That sense of, I don't feel like the weirdo because am I the only one that feels this way or approaches it this way? You start to realize, wow, there's some common bonds across various Asian or Pacific Islander communities, and really thinking about how this influences the leadership style.
Linda, I am totally fascinated by this. I've never thought of my Asian American background as influencing my leadership style. How has your background influenced your leadership style? Surely you've thought about this. Give us some insights that maybe you or others have had about this journey.
So for me, that was my first introduction to LEAP was through this workshop. And for me, it was mind blowing, as you can imagine. And it really got me thinking about, wow, I never thought about how culturally the things that I've been taught, the things that I've heard from my family influences the way I approach my interactions with people. It influences the way I communicate. And then therefore it also influences the way I would lead. And for me, my ahas were as I think about my values and how that influences my leadership style, I think about harmony is a huge one for me. Let's all get along. And I always say our values are neither good or bad, but a value that is taken too much to an extreme can become a hindrance in a sense. And so I thought about how harmony can be helpful in really bringing people together and finding those common bonds, but also being too much beholden or really tied to that, it makes it hard for me to deal with conflict. That I realized was something that was really hard because I wanted to preserve harmony, that I was unwilling to engage in those difficult conversations. I was unwilling to stand my ground when I needed to,
Wow.
and it really became a journey for me because I knew that if I really wanted to grow as a leader, these are things that leaders need to do.
You need to understand where you're coming from, right?
Yeah. So I can understand myself, but here's the thing too, and I wanna say this to folks, those are still really difficult for me. I also needed to find ways to get comfortable with the fact that as much as that's important, I also needed to bring to the forefront this idea that sometimes those difficult conversations are necessary for the sake of the organization, the team, the group, the community. And there are ways in which I can still engage in those difficult conversations and not be a jerk about it, but still find ways where I can preserve the relationship with others and still try to achieve that ultimate goal of this has to happen because I have a bigger picture, a bigger reason for why this conversation needs to happen. And so that helped me to find that balance where I want to preserve harmony, but I also know that I have other bigger things that I need to also keep in mind as well too.
Linda, that is absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to have to think about this after this interview. It's clear that we have a lot to talk about when it comes to LEAP. But before we do that, I got to ask you, how do you get to become president and CEO of an organization like LEAP?
I will say, first off, I've been at Leap for a very long time, over 30 years.
Oh my God, you were 12 when you started.
Yes, thank you for being nice. I've been actually in this role as the CEO now. I'm in my 13th or 14th year. Time does fly. And honestly, I did not ever imagine that I would be at Leap this long. I started as a volunteer.
Oh,
I got introduced to the person who was the executive director, CEO at the time, and I started out as a volunteer and then
doing what?
just anything, I was just in between jobs at that time, and I was just volunteering, and I just said, "I'll come in," and I jokingly will tell him and others, I said, "I used to come in on such a regular enough basis that I think he felt bad, so he actually offered me a part-time job." So I was working part-time, mostly because I was also looking for another job, and I wasn't honestly, I took that as kind of a break time from having worked previously. I started working when I was in high school, and so I hadn't really taken a break, so it was a nice little break, and I was still getting some income, and that part-time job became a full-time job, and honestly, I never imagined that I would ever be the CEO. I mean, that was not my ambition when I started.
So, how did that happen?
I was there a long time. My boss and CEO at the time, he says, "Okay, I'm looking to retire." And he said, "I wanted to talk to you because I wanna see, are you interested in this role?" Yeah, so I wasn't sure if I was interested, but I did know that I've been at the organization a long time. I've done pretty much anything and everything there is been to do in the organization, and part of it is because we were relatively small and it gave me a lot of opportunities, and I thought, "You know what? I will put my name in the hat to be considered." However, I did say to him, I said, "I do not wanna be handed the job in the sense that
Mm.
I don't wanna get it by default because I'm already here and it's an internal promotion for me." I told him, I said, "My condition is I want the board to make a choice. I want them to choose me, not to inherit me."
So you wanted to compete for the job so that then you would feel like they picked you because you were the best person.
Yes. So I asked them, "Have them do a search. I want them to actually conduct a search, and then I will interview just like anybody else for this role, and then I want them to choose." Because part of the reason was also I've heard too many stories of when a successor to a longtime executive director or president, CEO steps into the role, they're not always going to have a long, successful tenure because they were just appointed from within. That's why I felt like, for me, I needed them to choose me, because if they don't feel like they had that choice, then my concern was, is this going to be the kind of relationship that is gonna be a positive one
Ah.
because they inherited me versus they chose me?
Man, that is brilliant because then from the first day of becoming CEO, even though they already knew you, they chose you.
Yes,
They supported you. You were the best candidate. They weren't second guessing themselves and saying, should we have done a search?
yes.
Brilliant.
This way, because they did do the search, because they did interview and consider other candidates, but yet they still chose to go with me, then it was almost a reset of our relationship. Now I wasn't coming in as just somebody that they inherited, that I was already, got an internal promotion. I was coming in as a candidate that they conducted a search and that they selected me for this job. And I think that for me, that made a difference too. I will also share my appreciation to my predecessor because he did not hang around. He could have. He was always accessible to me, but he did not hang around to kind of look over my shoulder, to be this other presence where people would defer to him because he's still around. We actually kept a somewhat of a arm's length kind of relationship for about a year. I still consulted with him, but
But you were in charge.
I was in charge so that he enabled me to establish my presence as the leader. And so after about a year, 18 months or so, I try to find ways to bring him back more into the fold. But then by that point, I had been able to establish my role as the leader of the organization.
Man, that is good governance that you were able to really implement and that the board was behind. Linda, let's turn to LEAP. Talk to us about the different types of programs that you offer because you offer different programs for different types of people in kind of at different stages of their journey.
Yeah. I like to say from the classroom to the boardroom, we have a program for almost everybody. And the other thing that I think that's unique about LEAP from a programmatic point of view is that we offer programs across sectors and across the life stages. So, for example, we have programs for individuals in corporate, in nonprofit, in higher education. And then when you think about it from a life stage perspective, we do work with students who are going to go into possibly a corporate, nonprofit, higher education, or maybe into a public sector job. We have programs that are for folks that are relatively earlier in their career in our corporate and nonprofit pillars. And we have programs that are for those that are kind of more mid-career in corporate, nonprofit, and higher education. And then we have programs that are for people who are a little bit more advanced in their career, are on the cusp of becoming an executive, and in our corporate and nonprofit to a little bit of a degree, our higher ed program straddles that life stage. And so that to me makes things more interesting because what I see is that the leadership skills transcend, to a degree, the basic leadership skills transcend sectors. And so leadership is leadership and leadership. You could use your leadership skills, whether you start in corporate, move into higher education, or move from nonprofits into corporate or into higher education. Those basic leadership skills are ones that I think are fundamental that people can bring. One of the things that I think our focus on these cross-sector programs brings is it enables us to create opportunities where we could bring people across the various sectors to come together and to learn from each other.
Linda, let me dive into your leadership programs. What do they look like? Are they like months long programs? Are they academies? Are you in a cohort? How do they work?
Our programs are cohort driven. We have our signature programs. We also have workshops, and we also have public facing open, 1 hour webinar type programs as well too. But our signature programs are all cohort based.
How many people in a cohort?
It depends, but on average, we tend to have small cohorts. Also, since the pandemic, we have a lot of virtual offerings. We do have some hybrid where it's a combination of both in-person and virtual. And then we do offer some limited in-person only programming as well too, but it can vary in length from, like, for example, our corporate signature programs are typically 6 days over a period of 2 weeks. So 3 days 1 week and then 3 days the consecutive week. We have, for example, our nonprofit programs. Those are multi-session over a period of roughly about 4 months. And then we also have our higher ed program, which is 4 consecutive days. And that one is one of the ones that's fully in person. In our signature programs, in our corporate and nonprofit ones particularly, one of the other things that we offer is one-on-one executive coaching with certified executive coaches. I believe we have the largest cohort of Asian American coaches. We're actually looking to find Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian coaches as well too, but we have roughly about 55, 60 Asian American coaches on our current roster, and I'd say we would be able to have more, but that's enough to give everybody some business from us.
Wow, that's amazing. So, if these programs are mostly in person but some virtual, are you sourcing participants from around the country or is it mostly Southern California?
No, we are national in our scope, so we have people from all over the country. Occasionally, we'll also have folks from Canada as well too, and in the past, we've actually done work with Asian American expats based in Asia as well too.
Oh, interesting.
We've also done programming in India and in Japan. One of my long-term visions, I have global ambitions for LEAP. I would love to see us do programming in Australia, in Europe. We'd love to do more in Canada as well too, because I believe, the premise that I talked about in terms of the cultural values influencing our leadership style. I think about populations or countries or regions where there are diasporas of Asians and Pacific Islanders. I think they would also find a lot of the work that we do here with the Asian and Pacific Islander diasporas and communities. A lot of the same work would probably be relevant to Asian and Pacific Islander diasporas in Australia or Canada or in Europe, where you're part of an Asian community, but yet you're also navigating a cultural landscape where you may not be part of the majority. And so, how do you navigate as a leader that honors who you are ethnically, but also navigating that environment where it's also multicultural and being able to really be an effective leader in those kind of environments? So, that's part of my long-term vision that I have for LEAD and being able to bring some of our work to other regions where I believe people can also benefit from what we've learned over the years.
Wow. Well, Linda, you've also got something called the 2025 Leadership Experience and Celebration. That sounds really interesting and fun. Tell us about it.
It's our annual fundraiser. It will be held on July 16th and 17th. It will be in Southern California. This year is the first year that we've actually expanded out the leadership experience from what was roughly about maybe a half a day programming to now what is going to be a day and a half programming, along with our celebration in which we recognize and honor leaders from within the Asian and Pacific Islander community. And within this leadership experience, we'll be offering different workshops, but we're also doing something a little bit different. We're holding what we're calling caucuses. So a lot of times, people go to these conferences, you go in, you go out, but you don't really get a chance to debrief, in a sense, what you learned in some of these workshops with other people and find where some of those common bonds. So what we want to do is we want to bring together the attendees into conversations and build not only community, but do it around some of the common conversations around the workshops that they attended, what they learned, what are some of the things that were their ahas, finding ways in which they can share, they can network, they can get to know other people in somewhat of a more organic way, but not being just random. Let's just throw everybody into a room and you're networking with each other. It's not always going to be comfortable for everybody. And so we wanted to make it so that people would have a chance to make it both a learning, but also an opportunity to build community as well too, and get to know others who will be there as well.
So if people will be caucusing, are they caucusing based on something that brings them together? Like maybe they're all in the nonprofit sector or they're all Filipino Americans, or is it just, hey, here's random, have a small conversation?
Yeah, it's not necessarily gonna be random. I think we're still working out those details, but to your point, I think we're gonna create tables where people can choose to join a table because maybe, they're from corporate, maybe they're from nonprofit, or maybe, like you said, maybe they're from the South, or maybe they're from the Midwest, or maybe they're all Filipino, or maybe they're all young professionals. So there's varying different ways in which people can caucus together. Maybe somebody who's older wants to join the Gen Z group or something like that to be able to hear their perspective. We want to give people choices where they can get to know other people based on some common interest so that it's not totally random, but also at the same time giving the opportunity where there's this feeling of a little bit more structure to getting to know others.
When I first started this interview, I thought, why a leadership program for Asian Pacifics when there are a jillion leadership programs out there? But what I'm really hearing from you is that leadership often has a cultural context, and your identity might affect even how you navigate an environment where you're not part of the majority. And so what you're doing is providing leadership training for a very specific context, for a specific community. And it totally makes sense now that you're explaining all this.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it this way. LEAP was founded because we wanted to be able to encourage and enable more Asian and Pacific Islanders to step into leadership roles and to be able to have that confidence to see themselves as leaders too. I think what's really also important, as I think about how you were just summarizing it, is as we're navigating the environment that we're in, we have seen the value of having diverse perspectives at those decision-making tables where policies are made, whether it's corporate policy, whether it's higher education policy, whether it's nonprofit policy, whether it's public policy. You need to have people with different perspectives in these spaces to be able to consider various different angles of the decisions that are going to affect people. And to me, that kind of diversity of perspectives needs to include Asian and Pacific Islanders, as well as the whole host of many different types of people who bring their different life experiences. And that's why we're doing what we're doing to try to help encourage, enable, and to really seed those fields of leadership that really need all of us.
The AA voices at the table, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Linda, it's May 2025, and May is AA NHPI Heritage Month. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander. I have a friend who says it's Anupi month. How are you celebrating AANHPI Heritage Month?
I'm gonna say, when you ask, "How are you?" I'm gonna take it as, "How is LEAP celebrating?"
Well, we can talk about LEAP, but I also want to know how you're celebrating it because I'm certainly celebrating it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna first start with LEAP because we're taking this month to be able to give back more to our community, and so we have a series of free workshops that we are offering open to anybody who wanna come and participate in our workshops. They can go onto our website, and I will also be sharing those workshops with you, Joanna, so that it can also be shared through your network as well too. We have a couple different sessions this week and next week through the end of the month, so there's definitely lots of different things where people who might be curious about our work can take part in. And as for me, I am celebrating in the sense of just being able to continue to honor the legacy that our ancestors have brought to us. One thing I will say, I think, like, as any good Asian American, also for me, I've used this as a time to explore all the different kinds of awesome and tasty Asian American restaurants
Oh, 100%.
in Southern California where I live. If anybody is interested in any of the restaurant options that I've been trying, I am happy to share some of the places. I've made it a point that I'm trying to support Asian American businesses and at the same time also trying out a lot of different Asian American restaurants in Southern California. So that's how I'm celebrating AANHPI Heritage Month.
I love it. Linda, the ASAE annual conference will be in LA this year. I'm looking forward to those recommendations and I look forward to seeing you.
Absolutely. I got lots of recommendations for where to go to eat. We got lots of great options, and let's celebrate and let's also support our AANHPI entrepreneurs and community in this way.
Absolutely. Linda, this was a terrific interview. I hope you'll come back and tell us about all the new things that you're doing to really expand the leadership cohort among AA and HPI professionals. Thank you.
Always happy to talk about leadership. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!